Hi, I'm Nasreen Bakht Brady, Senior Product Manager at PatSnap. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm part of such an interesting day and a really impressive group of presenters. So, just a touch of context before we dig into the agenda. At PatSnap, we aim to help our customers leverage intel around a company's technologies and innovation, which of course includes patents and IP intelligence. Supporting innovation for us means matching intel and insights with experts and business leaders so they can make smart, efficient, and fast decisions around innovation. I don't think I have to tell this group about the value and important insight held within IP as a source of intel. But today, we'll talk about how attaining and leveraging IP intelligence has changed with evolving needs and growing solutions, and how companies we work with are making use of these solutions to make decisions and ultimately accelerate innovation. We'll touch on how AI has updated the bread and butter of IP intel, searching, understanding, and analyzing patents. And then we'll look at an example of how a company can connect and use relevant information with IP intelligence and how that gathered intel and knowledge can be used early and throughout the entire innovation process and across an entire organization. I referenced earlier a shift or changing needs. Within the last 1 or 2 decades, we've seen a shift in who has interest in gaining IP intelligence. And we can see at least three big things that have happened in that time span. Data exploded, both within patents and data generally. There is just a tremendous amount of data available and accessible. The rate of innovation is rapid, and importance on technology, innovation, and intangible assets has grown. In this chart, each blue box is a century, and in the last 20 years, we see big and rapid technological developments. And the last piece is that various types of AI and machine learning, they've completely changed the way we consume and use data. And with this stage set, the shift I referenced earlier makes a lot of sense. We've gone from IP professionals coming to companies like ours to get help to do their work, to R&D putting on their IP hats and working more closely with IP and legal. And now entire organizations are seeking solutions to bring their intel and innovation to the forefront and make it accessible across their organizations, whether sourced from IP, literature, news, company and financial data, and more. If I had to boil down the needs, it's more intel into more hands now. I'm going to pop to this sort of overwhelming slide for just a moment in the hope that when you get this deck, you can take more than a breath to absorb it. And even better, reach out if you're interested in learning more. This is a high level view of just some of the ways we leverage AI to make it easier to gain valuable insight. We can really only touch on the surface during our time together today. We're in a really exceptionally exciting time where there are smarter solutions every day to chip away at the problems we know and introduce transformational ways that we consume, learn from, and use data. Let's talk about core patent intelligence. The general idea that if you want to gain insight from patents, it's essentially the same. You need to be able to find it being relevant patents. You need to be able to understand it, and you need to be able to communicate your findings, whether it's to support an R&D or patenting decision, part of due diligence, or for M&A, competitive intelligence, or something else. There's a lot of complexity in each of those points. And the really nice thing about democratizing patent data for a wider group of people outside of IP professionals is that the solutions aren't oversimplifying or dumbing things down. They help us gain quality and efficiency across the board. So even though you could read and understand a big stack of patents on your desk, it doesn't mean that you want to or that you have the time. So let's run through a list of ways where AI and other smart solutions help people find relevant patents, understand them, and then communicate their findings. So when we think about making it easier to find relevant patents for whatever you're looking for, Providing options comes to mind, but of course, every idea and technology space of interest doesn't come with the perfect companion Boolean query. So, in addition to the abilities to search across the many fields that can be extracted from patents and searched, semantic search options are really strong now. More data means more noise, and when semantic search can understand concepts from your query and the concepts from patent documents and use that to return the most relevant results back to you in order, it's not only a huge time saver, but it also provides a safety net to find what you might have otherwise missed. And it gives people who are not used to searching patents an easy and fast option to find relevant documents. The same sort of machine learning is employed for things like finding similar documents if you find one that's really on point. Also, image search and chemical search provide ways of finding that may fit better for certain technologies that aren't expressed as easily in normal text. These options let you express what you're looking for in the way that makes the most sense for you, no matter your familiarity with patents or searching, the purpose of your search, or the tech area. So then you have to understand patents. And like I said earlier, just because you can read and make sense of a stack of patents, it doesn't mean it's a good use of your time. So again, providing options for you to look at the important parts of patents easily makes sense. If you're scanning a list of patents, maybe you want to look at titles and selected information. Or maybe it's more useful and easier to look at the figures to understand. Or within an individual patent, here I'm focused on images again. Here's an image from a document. And here I'm showing something we call smart image. It's a major time saver because those components in the figures are pulled out and labeled. And when I look at the text of the document side by side, I can click on the label to find it within the text. It's a little hard to see here, but I clicked on the touch panel, number 15 on the right in red. And you can see on the left in the description, it's pointing to me to where that's described. Same would be for the claims too. And if you're focused on claims, here's a couple more big time savers. Tucking dependent claims behind independent, and things like here on the right, showing how the claims change from application to grant. And then there is another aspect of understanding that's much less about individual documents and more about understanding what's here or the lay of the land. New tools and visuals are available now that let you get this high level view to understand what's there without really lengthy analysis or even knowing your way around a patent well. And while you might use visuals to help visually search and understand what's there, they're, of course, really useful for helping to communicate your findings and to tell a story without giving a Patents 101 course first. I think LinkedIn ads and even my Instagram ads feed me lots of examples of the amazing visualizations of data that's available today, enabled by AI. And we have options to tell stories that don't have to use IPC and CPC. We're talking about words and concepts within your company's technical space, so it'll make sense to your colleagues. You can put charts together that help tell your story for your audience, or use what we call playbooks that group charts together and tell a story with a purpose. So you don't have to devote your life to getting data into visuals. And no matter what you're using patent intelligence for, you can tailor the visuals to tell your story in a way that will resonate with your non IP audience and will blend with other intel that you need for making decisions around innovation, like market intelligence. So it's great if more people can use patents and gain insights there. But we know you can't make decisions based on patents alone. Here's a snapshot of all the data we put together to help innovators make decisions today. But of course, that can grow over time. The importance of connected innovation really clicked for me a few years ago. I had one of those delayed aha moments. Not where you figure something great out, but when you remember something and then something clicks that helps you understand something better. If you bear with me for a second or a minute, I'll explain. I'm going to share a personal story. So, when I was an undergrad, I was working on a project and I went to the library and I needed some help. So, I went to the librarian And he helped me find some things, but he also suggested a resource that was in the law school's library and wrote it down for me. So I had actually never been to that part of the campus before, so I'd asked for directions. When I got there, the security guard told me that I needed special permission to use the law library because I was an undergrad. So I was really frustrated because I didn't even know where to get permission from. And honestly, I just did the project without that resource and probably got a fine grade. But sometime later, I remembered that happening and I thought, this must be how someone feels about patent data if they haven't already been invited to use it and understand it. What if it hadn't been a grade hanging in the balance, but a decision that had millions of dollars attached to it? How frustrating must it be to not even know about the other library? And even if you find out about it, you still can't get in. Wouldn't it be better if all the information was in one place and connected? So even if it was not somewhere I typically look, it was still accessible to me, kind of like this connected data. So, by the way, thanks for hanging with me through that digression. Sure enough, I am watching myself turn into my father, who really likes to go on, and I can't seem to stop it from happening. So, there you go. But now let's look at a real example of how a variety of resources like we have here can help make really informed decisions much earlier. Let's look at an example around telehealth. Imagine this is a space potentially of interest to you and your business. A pandemic hits, and we see in the news some articles about telehealth and VC funding. You wonder if this might be a one off media spun thing, or is it a real trend that might be worth exploring and might hold some opportunities? So let's see and explore in our discovery tool that connects all this different data together. So we searched for telehealth, and with the help of machine learning we mentioned earlier, we managed a really quick and on target search for this area. Like we observed anecdotally by reading articles earlier, we see the trend is up in news, which makes perfect sense in early 2020. And we can see VC investment and M&A in this telehealth area. It looks pretty promising. So let's keep exploring. Now let's look at innovation in the space. So looking at patents, we get a sense of the size of the space, pretty decently sized. We see the upward filing trend and trajectory, which wouldn't have been influenced by COVID-19 since this was taken in mid 2020. And similarly, we see scientific literature growing in this space too. From all that information, we can step back and say, who's playing in this space and where? And then we can look at things like the size of the companies. Is it big players, medium, small? And feeling quite optimistic so far, we can look at potential opportunities. So maybe you can check out the startups in this area. We work with a lot of larger companies to help them explore opportunities and potentially find a startup like this to potentially bring in. You might find a particular target like Care that we saw back in the news article at the start of this, and then we can look into them deeper. We can see they're backed by patents, they've been in the news for funding. Similarly, you might be interested in looking at a university to partner with. So, with that one search exercise, we were able to explore an area and dig in around different aspects in one place. This was one example, but you can imagine that this sort of insight would be valuable for a lot of different purposes, especially when assessing opportunities and making build, buy, or partner decisions. In December, we did a joint presentation with Dow Chemical for a product development group. They're pulling in insight from all these different sources to make a number of different decisions. And one really interesting thing they reported on from a case study in that presentation is that they previously were averaging 60 to 80 hours for a certain project type exploring an opportunity. And they got that down to 20 hours. Honestly, I could stand up and clap for that because I don't know anybody who wouldn't like 40 to 60 hours back per project. Frankly, I'm happy to get 5 or 10 minutes back in a meeting on the rare occasion that that happens. That really weaves into my last point around collaboration. I've just taken this piece from that joint presentation from December because it really speaks to where we see a lot of organizations wanting to be alignment across teams and across the innovation process. Dow Chemical expressed a problem that I think rings true for a lot of organizations. They have a lot of clever, innovative, likely patentable ideas, but that alone doesn't mean that they should pursue them. And they can't act on all their ideas. So they really need to consider more. Things like what they called commercial relevance. So they need to stand up IP intelligence and market intelligence and their own business initiatives, and then use insights from all the different data to align across the departments early. There's a lot more we could talk about in this area. Many organizations are keen to align teams early and break down silos. The way we can consume patent data and connect it to other data has really opened the door to broader use across an organization early and throughout the innovation process. You can speed up processes so you don't have to necessarily wait for something to hit your desk or for a quarterly meeting. It doesn't have to be a relay race with a formal handoff. You can work more collaboratively throughout. Gather intelligence in one place with visibility across teams, and keep that gathered intel alongside your added knowledge in one place and for future use. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really look forward to hearing from everyone that's interested in learning more. Thanks again.